Just a few days left before the release of Wuthering Waves, I think I see a bright future for Wuthering Waves content creators. I've seen a lot of guides, a lot of gameplay showcase, but also a lot of drama about Genshin versus Wuthering Waves. Hoyo versus Kuro, PGR versus Honkai Impact, holy shit, I don't care. So for today's video, instead of creating another drama, let me actually be a guy that helps you guys Genshin players to try and play Wuthering Waves instead. As an ex-Day 1 Genshin player, I played Genshin for around 2 years already. I think I played Genshin around 1 year ago. And also as a CBT1 and CBT2 player for Wuthering Waves, I will explain any terms that you have in Genshin Impact that is equivalent to what we have in Wuthering Waves. And I will also explain how do you play the game, in contrary with Genshin Impact. I hope this will make things easier for you guys to transition into the game. But before I start the video, as usual, a reminder, if you already watched my video several times in the past, make sure to click that subscribe button. It's free because again, there are over 90% of you guys that still haven't subscribed yet every time you watch my video. If you are new here, that is acceptable I guess, but if you are a long time viewers, please make sure to support the channel, it will be very appreciated. That aside, let's just jump to the video. The most basic thing that I want to introduce first is the resin system. In here we call it as wave plates. The maximum cap for wave plates is 240. You get one for every 6 minutes instead of 8 minutes in Genshin. So you need exactly 1 day to fill up your resin or wave plates here from 0 up to 240. And thanks to this, you don't need to log in the game twice in a day, as long as you always spend all of your stamina. So what do we do with the resin or wave plates here in Wuthering Waves? In Genshin Impact, you most likely spend your stamina to farm artifacts, and only farm for ascension skill level or weapon materials if you have a new character comes into your party. But in Wuthering Waves, you don't need to spend your stamina to farm artifacts, you still do the exact same thing like you do in Genshin Impact, but you just skip the artifact farming part. So another terms that I want to introduce next is an echo, which equivalent to artifacts in Genshin Impact. Yes, you don't need to use your stamina to get your artifacts here, but you need to spend your stamina to level them up by farming the level up materials, and also to get the tuners to unlock the subsets for your echo. How do we farm our echo then, or how do we farm for our artifacts in Wuthering Waves? Again, I've already explained about the ecosystem multiple times already. If you want a detailed video, I think you can just watch my CBT2 review video, or my echo crash video here if you want to make it shorter. I think it explains quite detailed already. So I will explain briefly about how to get your echo here. You basically kill an enemy and then there will be a chance for them to drop their holograms, like this for example, and then you can collect them, which we call this as an echo here. The monsters then will respawn themselves and you can just simply kill them again if you want to get more echoes, which is the reason why you don't need to spend your stamina at all to farm for your artifacts in Wuthering Waves. Keep in mind, some of these enemies have different respawn timers, so some echo will take longer than another to farm, which make them as a rare echo. You can also use the echo in combat to attack the enemies, and you can also use them to travel around the map, depending on their abilities. Next, about the combat, we have terms like Resonance Skill and Resonance Liberation, which is equivalent to Elemental Skill and Elemental Burst from Genshin Impact. Keep in mind, combat in Wuthering Waves works very differently than Genshin, hence we have quite a lot of new terms that is not exist in Genshin Impact. For example, we have Concerto Bar, Intro Skill, Outro Skill, and Forte Gauge. Let's start with Forte Gauge first, which located on the top of your HP gauge right here. It refers to specific mechanics that works very differently for each characters. For example, Sanhua will do a special heavy attack if you release the heavy attack at the right timing, according to her Forte Gauge right here. Another simple example is Rufer. He will do a different elemental skill, or should I say resonance skill here, if he has more than 50% of his Forte Gauge. The playstyle for each characters differ from one another based on this Forte Gauge, which we can essentially call it as core passive if you are coming from PGR, which makes the game a lot more fun in my opinion. Another thing that a lot of people have been asking about the combat in Wuthering Waves is that is there any elemental reaction in Wuthering Waves that works the same way like in Genshin Impact? What is the foundation to build your team if there is no elemental reaction to pair your characters with one another? Well, in Wuthering Waves, we have a thing called intro and outro skill instead. We used to have some sort of elemental reaction in CBT1, it was called Concerto effect, but in CBT2 they just remove it completely and they just change it into intro skill and outro skills. So how does it work? It works almost similar like KTE system if you have ever played PGR, or maybe you are in ZZZ Final Beta right now. ZZZ also has KTE. Obviously, the first step you need to do is to trigger the KTE first. How do we trigger KTE in Wuthering Waves? First, you need to fill up the Concerto bar right here, which you can see on the left of your HP bar. You fill it up by either attacking enemies or doing a perfect dodge, which is why dodge is very essential in Wuthering Waves. Once it is full, you can switch out to another character to trigger the intro and outro skill. If you are too focused on the battle, you probably won't pay too much attention to the concerto bar, then you can just listen to the audio cue that sounds like this. And then you just switch out to another character. So what is intro skill and what is outro skill? Honestly, it is pretty much very self-explanatory. The intro skill is an effect or an action that comes from the character that you switch into. An outro skill is a buff or an effect that comes from the character that you switch out from the field. For example, Rover outro skill gives you a slow motion effect. Same thing as Matrix.mbgr or Honkai Impact or whatever example you wanna say. And then we have Baichill intro skill. She performs a dive attack dealing glacial damage. So as you can see, when I switch into Baichill, there is a slow motion effect. That is not a general feature of the game. The slow motion happens because I'm switching out from Rover to Baichill, and that is the effect of Rover auto skill. Your combat loop is gonna be around switching character, filling up the concerto bar, and then switch out to another character, which is honestly makes sense for Kuro to limit the party to 3 characters only, because if there are more characters to switch, you're probably gonna end up losing DPS for switching out too many times from your main DPS character. So how do we know which character is synergized with one another? What you want to focus on is the auto skill here, unless they release a character that can buff your team passively just by being in the party. For example, Mortevi auto skill increase your heavy attack or charge attack damage bonus by 38%, so you can pair him with Jian. Why? Because Jian's ultimate attack is considered to be a heavy attack, and his ultimate is his main source of dealing damage. On top of intro and outro skill, we also have parry and perfect dodge mechanics. For parry, we have normal parry that you can do by simply attacking the boss at the right time with any attack, and then we also have red parry here, which you can only parry by using an echo. As you know, perfect dodge gives you concerto energy to do your intro and outro skill. Then what about parry? Is it necessary to do that if you can just dodge instead? One thing to note that each enemy has a stagger bar, the same thing like Genshin. If you bring it down, the enemy will enter a stagger state, which allows you to do more damage. There are 2 things you can do to drain the stagger bar really fast. One is by doing an intro skill, and number 2 is by doing a parry. Some of these boss also punish you if you fail to catch the parry. For example, like Crownless, he will do his egg attack string if you fail to catch his parry here, which definitely something you want to avoid. Some insane boss like Morning Ice will shoot a lot of missiles at you if you fail to catch the parry. We also have a lock-on feature here to center your camera easily around the enemies, so make sure to use that feature, especially if you are fighting against an enemy that likes to blink all around the place. For example, like Tempest Mavis, I don't think it is recommended to fight against him without using the lock-on feature, because he keeps moving all around your camera. Next, about the game mode. Since Genshin only has Parallel Abyss as endgame content, the only comparison we have with that is Tower of Adversity. Keep in mind, Wuthering Waves has more than one endgame content, so Spiral Abyss or Tower of Adversity here is not the only endgame content that we have in Wuthering Waves. As in CBT2, we have 3 endgame content, which is Spiral Abyss, aka Tower of Adversity, Depths of Elusive Realm, which is a roguelike game mode, and then Hologram bosses. More explanation in my previous video. For exploration, everything pretty much similar like Genshin. We have chests, puzzles, time challenge. We also have one thing that is similar to Anemoculus or Geoculus here, which we called as Sonen's Caskets. Unlike Genshin, where you collect them to increase your stamina early game, Sonen's Caskets only provide you materials and extra pool currencies if you exchange them to the NPC right here. Is there any way to increase your character stamina in Wuthering Waves then? The only way to increase your character's stamina is to level up your data bank, which you can level up by simply farming the echoes, and honestly, since it is mandatory to farm echo anyway, you're gonna end up with maximum stamina by simply farming echoes for your characters. Other than that, we also have monthly subscription, which we call Lunite subscription here, but people just simply call it monthly and battle pass system. Next, about the gacha, we have Astride as Primo Gems, Lustrous Tide as Coin Fate, Radiant Tide as Intertwined Fate, and we have the third gacha currency specifically for limited weapon banner, which is Forging Tide. Keep in mind, we also have standard weapon banner that you can choose freely which weapon you want to get, but for this banner, we use Lustrous Tide instead of Forging Tide for limited weapon banner. For Constellation, we call it as Sequence here, so if you see someone mention something like S6 or Sequence 6 character in Wuthering Waves, it is the same thing like C6 characters in Genshin Impact. Other than that, we have the menu. I will just write it down like this to make it easier for you to see it by yourself. You can pause the video, and that is pretty much it. I probably missed out some words or terminology that I have yet to explain, but I think I summarized 90% of Genshin terms already in Wuthering Waves, so I hope this video will help you guys, especially Genshin players, to transfer into the game easier. Anything you want to ask, just do at the comment section below, and I cannot wait to see how many Genshin copy comment in this video.